I'm Alex, currently retired game developer and half of psychotherapist. Gorgon.
Hello, my name is Gorgon. I'm a professional counselor in New Zealand. And if you're on Instagram, you will know me as gamer counselor. And off to you, Simon.
And I'm also a professional counsellor in New Zealand. I'm not too much on social media, maybe one day. But my sort of interests are into some geeky fictional stuff. Yeah.
Excellent. So today our topic of discussion is going to be flow in games, and then of course, as this is our we'll have a therapy take on that and how that applies to real life as well. And but just before we begin, I just want to say one thing, which is that in our previous episodes, I've mentioned that I've recently become a father, and as such, I have very little time and energy these days. So I'm going to be taking, we will call it an indefinite leave from the podcast after this episode, and I will be leaving in spirit here with the other two to take over. And I hope it's fun for you guys.
We're gonna miss you a lot.
yeah, thanks, Dad. And I'll miss doing this as well.
Mm-hmm.
But
Simon,
go on.
Oh no, it's good. It's a hard decision to make, but that's, I guess, sort of reminds me of what you said previously in a couple of episodes ago. It's like having those boundaries, and is that okay? This is too much. This is dragging. Should I say no to that because I need to prioritize in other areas of my life? So it's good you have the courage to realize and sort of say, okay, this is too much for me at the moment. Yeah.
Oh. Thanks for saying that, Simon. You're right. Like I had been thinking about it the last few weeks, and as usual, in typical Alex style, I thought, I can do everything I want. Having a 6-week-old baby doesn't mean I have to stop doing everything. But yeah, I wasn't really doing this justice. I felt, not really putting the desire and effort into it that I wanted to. So yeah,
cool.
So should we kick things off with this discussion of flow? Maybe I'll just start with my quick understanding of flow, which is this. So the way I understand flow from the game designer's perspective, at least, is that basically there's challenge in the game, and challenge can be a good thing. Because it keeps you wanting to get better and more skilled at the gameplay, or it can be a bad thing, perhaps if the game is too difficult or too easy. So the way I understand flow is that when we operate in these sort of in these boundaries of challenge, where it's not too easy and it's not too difficult, but it's just somewhere in between, and it can oscillate between those two limits, then it can be fun, and we go into this experience called flow, where we're really focused and enjoying the present moment of that experience. What do you guys think? Is there anything to add to that?
I think
Gorgon's got something. I think I haven't experienced flow too much myself personally, or maybe I have, but at a smaller state. But so it's hard to have, like, you hear these athletes or these people getting the states of flow, almost like meditation, or these sort of prime competitors, even like in gaming aspects. For me, I don't know. I think it's hard to know for sure. And there'll be a spectrum of the state of flow. So I'll talk later about that. But for the sense of flow, for the flow state, how I understand it is sort of like you're concentrated on a task, but you're not aware you're concentrated on the task in that sense. So that sort of the prefrontal cortex is engaged, but it's not really working as it normally would work. It's more the subcortex, like the sort of subconsciousness is controlling the body or the state. I would see it as that, and time just passes by because you're in that flow. Where, like Bruce Lee would say, you flow like water, and you don't even notice time goes past. So, and there'd be different levels to it. Like athletes would be conditioned at a higher state, I can imagine, because they're constantly training and in the high conditioning in both mind and body. But yeah, that's how I'd say, is that you're unaware of sort of the task, but you're aware. You're not quite hyper focused, but you're focused, but you're in the like state of peace at the same time. Yeah.
And it also sounds like when you're focusing on the tasks, no matter what it is, there's also an element of not much distractions around you to pull you back to the reality. Yeah, I think my understanding of flow is it's very similar to what Alex and Simon you've mentioned. And personally, I think I've really experienced the state of flow when I was on the drum set when I was playing at the service, worshiping and really getting into the song, and especially if I know that a big feel is coming up and I need to be you know what, I cannot muck this up, and there's an amount of difficulties trying to stay on the beat, and that is when I think I remember very clearly that wow, this is exhausting, but at the same time is just the whole off body experience that I've had that one time.
That's an interesting one. You mentioned playing the drums there, because I like playing the drums a lot. I wouldn't say I'm extremely experienced at them, but I have noticed that I play the drums best when I do kind of disengage the thinking part of my brain and just let my body and rhythm take over. As soon as I start to think about it too much, I just lose rhythm. It's really interesting.
Yeah, and it almost like the thinking become the distraction.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before we move on further into the discussion, can I read you?
Opening a book.
Yeah. Can I read you something from the original author
No.
of the State of Flow? Okay, but I'll force my way in as well. Anyway, that's a rhetorical question. So the author name Mihai Csikszentmihalyi.
Good.
Yeah, I've read it off the script. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi.
Yeah.
He actually broke his concept of flow into 6 factors of experience. So I'm gonna read these 6 factors and see if you can identify how these 6 factors influence your flow. According to him, one's need to kind of achieve these 6 factors so that they to explain that they're in the flow. The first one is focused concentration on the present moment or task. That's basically what both of you have mentioned. Merging of action and awareness. A loss of reflective self-consciousness.
Okay, that's important, isn't it? Yeah, I definitely am not in flow when I'm public speaking.
Yep, because there's a lot of distraction, like the internal things.
Oh, God, I'm not doing it properly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like people are judging me, or well, what are those naked people doing, or tomato doing in front of me? Anyway, the fourth one is a sense of personal control or agency over the situation or activity.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So what would the opposite of that look like? So if you had no sense of control, you might be like a passenger in a car or something. Yeah, that's interesting. Anyway.
Yeah, so a sense of personal control or agency. I think it really comes down to the confidence and in your ability in taking control. So let's say drum, I can do this, and just let your whole sense of control over where.
Yeah. And I can imagine in a game scenario where that would be wrong would be, so if you didn't have a sense of control, might be in a game where there's too much random stuff going on, and so winning or losing just feels random. That doesn't feel like you're in control.
Yep, that's a good example. Yeah, that's true. So sense of control that you can do it.
Yeah.
The fifth one is a distortion of temporal experience, or one's subjective experience of time is altered. So this is what both of you and Simon say that time seems to speed up or slow down. And the last one is experience of the activity as intrinsically rewarding or as autotelic.
Autotelic.
Yeah, so basically it means that you complete the task.
I'm looking at autotelic right now. Of an activity or creative work having an end or purpose in itself.
So that's the goal.
Yes. Okay. So that's an intrinsic reward to it. So it's not something just like I wanted to get this goal because I will have a Xbox achievement point, but you're doing it because you want to do it.
Or like I'm just going to do mindfulness right now. You have to be something rewarding, something that comes back for you.
Yeah, that last one's quite interesting from the perspective of modern games as well, because a lot of modern games try to incentivize players with things like loot boxes, or I'm generalizing a bit, but in some games have too much of a grinding element, so there's this like progression that you're supposed to buy into. But for me, I mean, personally, I like games that have more intrinsic value than achievement value, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, similar as well, because I think I guess the 6 factors of flow, I think originally this person Mihai Csikszentmihalyi doesn't at the time that they don't have game per se, but I think a lot of other field actually use the state of flow to really explain how the engagement is in those activities.
And even getting into a state of flow, because it's not spontaneous. I think a lot of times you sort of have to be prepared in a good mental state. I can imagine if you're really tired or hungover, it'd be a lot harder than if you're quite fresh, So I can imagine a lot of it is getting yourself up to that state where you can get into a state of flow.
And I think the other thing is, because we talk about how if you're thinking, actively, cognitively thinking, it's hard to get into the flow. I think that is also the true. I mean, you can't get into the flow if you keep on thinking about I want to get into the flow.
Yeah.
Because then you're conscious about what would be the distraction and whatnot.
Yeah, right.
I don't know to lead into now, but if we look into the fictional side of things, it sort of reminds me of Goku Ultra Instinct.
Tell us more about it.
Yeah, well, I've seen it. I've only seen up to when they've done the World Games, but like they were trained by now I need to remember his name. It's not the main guy. But he was saying to him and Vegeta that I need to know his name. It's going to annoy me. Is that you guys think of punching before you punch, or you guys think of attacking before you attack, and you just got to attack. You just got to let your instincts take over in a sense.
Right.
So he can't choose to go into Ultra Instinct. He sort of has to be there presently. He sort of has to need it. And early on in the beginning of sort of Dragon Ball Z is that he has to get angry, quite mad to go Super Saiyan. And then you see later on, even like Super Saiyan 4 or even 3, you see them become more primal, like the sort of the monkey, the sort of the ape. It's ape, not monkey, because monkeys don't have tails. don't no, apes don't have tails, monkeys have tails. So it becomes a monkey, and later on he becomes like the blue here, and it's a bit more godly because he's training with the god. But the instinct side of things is he's beyond of thinking that. He just becomes, and then he just fights, almost not even paying attention how he's fighting. He just bees. He's in this state. So it's sort of that sort of rings about sort of Goku going ultra instinct. It's a bit of a yeah.
That's interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I can see how the state of flow can be applicable in the Goku example as well. It's like really in the presence. Things are challenging. I'm sure if he needs to go into that state, it means that the enemy is super strong.
Yeah, that's basically his ultimate state, but he can't just choose whenever he wants to go into it. It's just like sort of a dire need, but not like when he's basically pounded to the ground and he can't move, but he still has to have some energy to him. So it's sort of like a state where he can, and over time he might be able to choose to get into it. But initially, it sort of just becomes,
It's like when you're at a LAN party, it's like 3 a.m. and you think it's over, but then you have a can of Red Bull. Blow your knee.
A can of flow state right there, like
You can last until sunrise.
and it's good that you did a brand Red Bull, so that's going to be our next sponsor.
That'd be good.
Gives you wings. I mean,
I have a question for you guys. Can you guys think of a game that really elicited a state of flow in you?
See, I don't want to go again twice, but for me,
I thought that was
You're going.
a show, not a game. I didn't realize it was a game.
no. Another thing, I'd say, one time I would say, wasn't long. Would be more Dark Souls.
Oh yeah.
Or maybe even Bloodborne. I can't remember which one. But it wasn't normally. I would imagine fighting a boss, but I was more like going through a stage and not dying, and then getting really into it, and even the environment. And it's normally quite action packed. That it won't be too long until you fight an enemy. I remember going in that, and just not being aware of my health bar and all that. So forgetting to heal, forgetting all this, and just learning the move set. And then you're fighting NPCs as well, so they react almost like a human, but they're quite smart, and just sort of learning their move set and like dancing in a sense. I think it was Bloodborne because it's more attack orientated, and then just moving on to the next enemy, not focusing on my stamina or my health bar or anything like that. But it didn't last for too long though. But that's something that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Gorgon?
Yeah, it looks like Alex is thinking about something too. You wanna go first?
Oh no, I was thinking, just reflecting on what Simon said. You mentioned this kind of dance of gameplay around the non-playable characters. I thought, I've been playing a bit of Bayonetta recently, and it's a similar thing. Is you have this huge range of kicks and punches and ridiculously over the top moves based on kink and all this sort of stuff that you can do, but it all is one kind of, you chain it together into one dance with the enemies. It's quite good.
Would you say that you got in the state of flow?
Yeah,
flow state?
I would, and I'm still at that point where I'm learning the game. So, because I've only just started playing it recently, so it definitely engages my my frontal cortex, and I have to think about what I'm doing, and I die quite often.
Okay.
I think it is a difficult game as well.
Yeah, it reminds me of playing Celeste. Yeah, it has that difficulty there too. Yeah, but for myself, I think the game that really that I have experienced kind of state of flow, it would be Age of Empires, those real-time strategies game when I'm engaging with the opponent. when I have the army ready to charge, trying to organize how the position is like, to take notice of what type of soldier or army is being thrown at me. So a lot of time, when I play those kind of games, I would want to have my time alone, because if I have my wife beside me, that would be a constant distraction, and I can't, I can't really focus
Yeah.
there. I need to pay attention to, that she needs me there, or just be mindful. Yeah.
Is that Age of Empires 2?
Age of Empires, yes, but at the moment I'm playing Age of Empire 4.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Is that
that's
PvE? You can get into it.
yeah, that's both PvE and PvP.
Ah, cool.
But I'm at the moment just playing PvE. I'm not good enough to play PvP. If I really play PvP, there wouldn't be a state of flow. I'm just I'm just constantly destroyed by the enemy. It would definitely demotivate me.
I was like, how good is this guy? Is he doing PvP in the flow state?
PvE on easy mode.
That's interesting, eh? So if you're playing versus other players and it's too difficult, is that because maybe the servers, the game doesn't match you with players at your level, or is it just the game's designed in a way that you get smashed when you play against
It's
people?
intense, man. I used to watch them play, pros play. It's intense.
Right.
Well, I guess my fear of getting beat up has stopped me from entering the online realm. I've actually haven't played against a player before. It's just it's just the like what Seven said. I've seen how some people play, and I definitely know I'm not that level.
Yeah.
So not yet. Yeah.
And even that though, I think that game, I'm just thinking on the spot, would be hard for flow state, because you're always thinking ahead, and it's a real fast, in-depth chess match, and there's a lot of clicks, and a lot of management. You're fighting, quickly go back to the main center, and you everywhere, like in and out, and then you're looking at them, what they're doing, in and out. So you really have to engage the prefrontal. And I can imagine a flow state, you sort of, I'd imagine be quite hard to get into a flow state versus like especially PvP, unless the players are pretty easy that you just muck around.
And I wonder as well if the difficulty at getting into flow when you're playing other people is that people aren't predictable, so you can't use the cues of the AI of the non-playable characters anymore. So you have to react in real time. Not as easy. But then sportsmen can get in flow, can't they? So.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I think that the whole engaging the prefrontal cortex is really around how involved the thinking is in the game in the moment. Because I do see again, I don't think entering the state of flow is easy, because like I say, the only time that I can really strongly remember is when I'm playing a drum, not in games. But for games, the times where it's the closest to flow is really when I'm so into thinking, strategizing, where should I put my soldier and whatnot. And jumping example now, recently I've been playing a lot of Pokemon Unite. It's a mobile game. It's a short 10 minutes game, but that's a PvP game. And most of the time when I'm farming, leveling up my Pokemon, I'm still aware of my surrounding. But when there's a team fight, when you have to predict the opponent movement, you have to move, or when I have to move the Pokemon around, for that few, maybe 1 to 2 minutes, it feels very long. And at the same time, I know that I'm not aware of my surrounding, because it happens to me once when my wife just called me, talk to me, I zone out. And after the fight, I was like, did I just hear you at the back of
flowing straight out of your relationship there?
So if I understand it, you felt like it went 1 or 2 minutes, but it went longer, or was it opposite?
The opposite. because it's just 1 or 2 minutes, but it felt longer because I was just so intense focus in that moment. So
I wondered as well because I when I am playing a game against someone else who is better than me in that moment or just in general whatever, that all these emotions start to come into play, like like self-criticism, disappointment, anger, frustration, and there was one of the factors of flow. Was it like the third one you said was something about what was it, like not being self-conscious? It was something like that. Not being
a loss of reflective self-consciousness.
yeah.
Yep.
So certainly, like when I start to lose in games, like my self-consciousness kicks in, and maybe that's when I fall out of flow.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah. I can imagine it'd be hard to be in flow while you're getting your ass kicked.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I quite enjoy kicking my brother's ass, but I had to balance that out, otherwise we won't play anymore.
Yeah, tell me about it. I get that too. I play fighting games with my wife,
Yeah.
Jasmine.
Oh.
So sometimes like, oh, what am I doing? Oh no, but I hope she doesn't listen to this podcast.
Oh, look at that! You won.
No, she's good. She's good.
All right, next on the list. So, can you guys think of a game that was really took you out of flow and you just disengaged with it?
Super Smash Mario. Is it, bro? It's just too difficult for me. I'm just saying out there.
Wait. So before we, you're talking about Super Smash Brothers or Super? What are you talking about?
Sorry. I mixed things up. Super Smash.
Bro.
Is it, bro? Is it the one that's on Switch where you have different Nintendo characters?
That's Super Smash Bros. Yeah.
Super Smash Bros. Yeah.
Okay, I'm clear.
Yeah. So that game, I love that game. I want to be good at that game, but I just cannot play that game because even on easy mode, easy mode is too easy. There's no challenge. I can't enjoy it. The medium mode sometimes can get a little bit difficult for me because it's not just fighting like side scrolling. There's so many things happening on screen. Even though I like to love it, I haven't finished the game. So so that's the game that elicit disengagement for me.
So there was no happy point between the two. Like easy was too easy, medium was too hard, and therefore there was no enjoyable moment for you in the game.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's what we mentioned before. I don't know if we did mention this, but it's that chart of challenge and skill and finding that perfect balance in between that. And if it's too challenging, then it's not really. If it requires too much skill.
So it really requires high challenges and high confidence in your ability to match up to enter the state of flow.
Yeah, and it's interesting because a good game design will ramp up your the skill and challenge needed to the skill needed to meet the challenge will be ramped up slowly from the beginning so that you stay engaged with it. But I guess maybe they kind of missed the mark on you there with Smash Bros.
Yeah, I might be the outlier there.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So that's me.
Cool. We finish off with you then, Alex. For me, any game that requires a lot of farming or grinding, or even like, say, for example, enjoy Assassin's Creed, but it's quite easy, and at the same time, there's so many things on the map and so many distractions that I'm not so invested into the game so much. I'm more like ticking boxes. And it's like, oh, I've got to save this damsel in distress. I've got to do this, got to do that. Yeah. All these fetch quests. Or you have to do something. You have to really grind and just do that to upskill experience points. It's just like, why am I playing this?
So they lost you on motivation there, eh? Because it's not you're not motivated to do it. That's
So
interesting.
I wouldn't say any specific games, because a lot of games I would find can get like that. But for me, it's a bit different, because um, I'm rather than focus more on the competition side of things, I'm more into the immersion kind of thing. So if I am immersion and with mastery, so I can do that sort of challenge and that sort of skill, but with immersion, and so I'm invested into this game, then I'm probably going to be more invested into like finding a flow state. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So what
Mm.
do you mean by immersion and mastery and
um, Thank you for asking that. Um, so there's this. I don't know. Can we plug websites? I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Let's do that.
Quantic Foundry does a nice, pretty cool gamer profile, sort of survey, motivation profile. And they've got a game motivation model, and they've divided it into 6. So it's action, social, mastery, achievement, immersion, and creativity. And each one is divided by 2. So action is destruction and or excitement. Social is more competition or the community. Like MMORPG would be like community, competition we're more like competitors working together, like I don't know, CS:GO or something. Mastery would be more like the challenge. So like Dark Souls would be like the challenge, or strategy, and that'd be more like Age of Empires. So you master, enough to play PvP. Achievement is at completion. So like Assassin's Creed, I'm going to do all of these ones and get my Xbox award or so forth. Or achievement in power. So that's another aspect of achievement, and that's I'm going to upskill my guy, so he's going to be OP. He's going to be like this boss, Um, and then next one for immersion, there's fantasy. So that's the fantasy side of things. And then the second part is story. So if you're really in tune, like for example, would that be like Last of Us? I really like that story. And
Okay.
yeah, and the sixth one is creativity, and it's divided by 2, and it's design. So that's like Minecraft. You get really into designing something that might be co-op with your friends, or that might be yourself, and you almost completed this whatever stage or whatever you're making, like maybe a house or even a ship. And the second part is discovery. So that's like thinking, exploring the maps, or exploring the hidden gems, or the secret treasures and so forth. Yeah. So back to what we were saying is that for me, I'm a sort of creative. I'm immersion and a mastery guy. So and there's a sort of gamer profile. So I'm an architect. So for me to get into a state of flow, I'm not as strong. I used to be more first-person shooter online, but not so much now. I would have to be invested into the game firsthand in order to really find that, because it will take time and a lot of investment into the game. I can imagine. Yeah. So I find a lot of games I'm sort of umming and ahhing for a long time. So to get in that state of flow, I really have to really get that, investment. But that's me. Don't want to take too much of the light from you, Alex. I know it'd be interesting to hear
Yeah,
from
well,
you as
yeah.
well.
Thanks for sharing that stuff on the Quantic Foundry gamer profiles. I've done that survey as well. We've all done it, and I've
Yeah.
thought it was really cool. It's interesting because I really love immersive games also. So, for example, I love Metroid Prime, which is it's one of my favorite games, and that's all about the aesthetic, the environment, exploration, and immersion. However, when I completed the survey, I must love action and social way more, because I came out as the acrobat slash gladiator profile type, which means
What?
that I'm the 98th percentile for action and
Wow.
93 percentile 93rd percentile for social. Um, which I guess reflects the fact that I love to play fast-paced, action-oriented games like sports games, maybe like Mario Strikers, Rocket League, Super Smash Bros. Even with people in the room sitting next to me. Like, yeah, it's one of my favorite ways to play games is on a couch with 2 or 3 other people. Yeah. So, just to tie that up, I guess, into the question I asked earlier, a game that really failed for me in terms of flow that I bombed out of would be actually I find it hard to say this because I really love Mario Kart, but interestingly, like I've played a lot of Mario Kart. Like I've played like every version since the N64, and the latest version on the Switch, weirdly, like for me, I think they broadened the tracks and they there's I think the catch up mechanic is back. And anyway, I find the game so dull compared to I think some of the previous iterations. Like for me, it feels too easy. And so I didn't bother even hardly playing the single player version. I play it with friends, but yeah, that's I bombed out of it because I was just like, oh, it's too easy now. Yeah.
So the social aspect, the social part of the motivation comes in when you play Mario Kart. It's
Yeah,
not big.
so
Yeah.
I'll pick it up to play it with other people. Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Yeah. Gorgon, do you want to share your gamer profile?
Yes, I can. Oh, but before that, I'm just curious about your gamer profile under your immersion because there's this secondary motivation. I'm not sure if you're able to access it. I'm curious, what's your secondary
Yeah, so my
motivation? Yeah,
secondary motivation.
Be either you mean either fantasy or
fantasy or
story?
story. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
hang on. Okay, so that would be under under what under immersion or under
Immersion.
action social?
Yeah, immersion.
Okay, sorry. Okay, here we go. Okay, here we go. Oh, weird. So I get fantasy is 24% and story is 21%.
Oh.
So both okay.
Yeah.
But they're both quite low though, because I think
Yeah.
Gladiator's got high in a lot of things.
Yeah. So where does it say something about a secondary motivation? Anyway, that is lowest on my list. Immersion. That's why it was weird because immersion is lowest on my survey outcome. But actually, I really like immersive games. Like I love The Last of Us, for example.
Interesting. Yeah. So I'm actually a bard. So essentially the highest I guess the first motivation category is immersion, 69%, followed by creativity, and then next I've the number third one is shared between social and mastery, and both action and achievement, they are sitting on 31% for actions and 29% for achievement. And I guess this reflects my struggles with Super Smash Bros. Because action is really not top of my I guess motivation, and maybe because of that I don't want to put in too much effort in leveling up my skills, or maybe I'm just bad at it. But that's that I can see how I play most of my games. And looking at the secondary motivation for immersion, the highest fantasy is 86%, but stories is 45%. So so I'm not too much into story, which playing action with Simon kind of reflects that as well. Sometimes I'm just okay, nope. but it's the environment, the fantasy that kind of hooked me in. Yeah,
I try to get into it. I try to talk about it. Hey, this is cool.
well, at least I have 45% there, so
yeah.
So that's my profile.
It's an interesting thing to think about narrative in video games because we do live in an age now where some people do just want their quick fix of gaming. So obviously mobile games are usually just that, and narrative plays such a small part in those games. Yeah, and I've worked with narrative designers in games as well, and mobile games, and
Mm-hmm.
that was quite interesting because trying to make narrative an important thing in a mobile game um, is really hard because
Mm.
you need to both have the platform and the game for it to present it to the player, and
Mm.
then you have to somehow engage the player with it so they're not just skipping it as soon as they want to get to the action of the game, whatever the game is. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm.
it's a tricky one these days. But
Oh, it's
uh,
funny.
then other games like the AAA games, of course, they do narrative so well. Some of them.
Mm.
Yes.
I was actually reading about a game called Unpacked recently, which I think has just been released. It's an indie game, and the story in that game is about basically you unpack boxes in this kind of pixel art world into your home, and you have to put things in the right place.
Yep.
So there's no, I don't think there's an explicit story, but there's an implicit story being told through the houses that you move into. So yeah, I found that really fascinating that you can tell a story without even using words, really.
Mm.
Wow, that's cool.
Mm.
That's bringing narrative in storytelling to another level. It's yes, part of the gameplay, but you can be very observant into
Mm.
how the house is being presented and whatnot.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. What were you going to say,
Mm.
Simon?
Oh, I was going to say, I don't know. This is, I can say it. I always think I've always maybe a long time ago, I talked to Gorgon about this. That I was interested into making a sort of psychoeducational, sort of therapeutic narrative kind of game, but be more like an interactive novel rather than a game. But
Mm.
it's hard to know. Those boundaries are blurred. But you're right. Is that, and I'll be interested in using it in a phone because you don't really need too much space in it. Um, but yeah, you're right. It's that narrative that really draws them in. But I find there's some quite good little interactive novels out there that you can't just click whenever. You got to wait until that story or that song or whatever finishes, and
Mm,
it sort of teaches you a bit, sort of be patient and so
Mm.
forth. And then you can move on to the next one. It has visual and sound as well,
Mm.
um, rather than the stereotypical mobile game, which is there to chew up your time and chew up your money and you know um, pay to win or whatever it might be.
Mm.
Um, like an actual, I don't know, a game that's can be quite helpful at the same time.
Mm.
But because people have their phones with them everywhere.
mm.
Um,
Well, it's so
yeah.
interesting, isn't it? Because how do you get immersed in something like a story or a story game
Mm,
while you've got notifications popping up on your screen? Eh?
Mm-hmm.
mm,
Yeah, there's
mm,
lots of distraction there as well.
Mm,
mm,
Mm.
mm, mm. That's a good point. And I can imagine even that would be hard to get into a flow state as well, because you're using an object which is normally used for like distracting and so forth, and or short periods of time, and then going to one thing to another. I can
Mm.
imagine that even what you're using, you sort of have to be aware of that flow as
Mm.
well. Mm-hmm.
Mm. So essentially, it. I think we also can say immersion is not the same thing as state of flow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because we can get the state of flow by being in a competition game, really fighting, testing out the skills. But
mm,
one being immersed in a game doesn't necessarily means that we are in the state of flow, because there might
Mm-hmm.
not be the challenges that drive us to I guess achieve a certain goal or whatnot. We are just plainly enjoying being in the game.
Mm. But I would say that it's not the core aspect, I would say, of state of flow or
Mm-hmm.
flow state. But I would say it's an ally to
Yes.
being that.
Yeah.
It's needed to be helpful, to be immersed in what you're doing,
Yeah.
or else you have no interest in it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
True. True. True.
yeah.
So, what about outside the world of games and entertainment, guys? Where else do you experience flow in your lives?
Go, Gordon.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned about drums, so that's one. But I sometimes very rarely, or not rarely, but not very common, but not rare. Sometimes in my counseling session with some students, where I know that that's this challenge in front of me, and I know that I can actually move things, hold the space for the client, and we are actually going somewhere. So, so at times, those are some of the very few counseling session where I actually enjoyed, and
You hear what
yeah,
he just said?
I enjoyed that, not at their misery.
No, I think he was just laughing. Oh, you actually enjoyed it,
He
like.
said one of the very few counselling sessions you actually enjoy.
Enjoy being a counselor. But yeah, and because the genuine relationship, the therapeutic alliances
Mm.
that's being built there, and knowing that I have the skills and whatnot to manage it.
Mm.
So yeah, so you hear that counselors can enjoy the sessions too.
Yeah. No, that and that's pretty impressive. Like to get to the point of flow in counseling, because you're holding a lot of things. Like you're double listening, you're hearing what they're saying. You're also aware of the times. Like counseling, you can't. It's hard not to be aware of the time, especially in a school, because the bell's going to go boom, and then
Mm,
you can't just say, "Oh, the bell's gone. See it." By next person, you got to prepare them before the bell as well,
mm,
so, so they can get out to the next period, or prepared, and you have to sort of prepare and so forth as well. So even to get in that, I would say there's context to it as well. So it's good to hear that, not just enjoy, but to a state of flow.
mm.
That means it must be quite stimulating. So you must be using a bit of your skill, and must be quite challenging, like you mentioned, that task ahead of you.
Yeah.
Um, mm,
Yeah, and I think that's why a good therapy session needs 1 hour, because obviously I'm not in the state of flow that whole hour. It's normally it's the middle chunk of it or near the end of it. And you are right that I also need to keep time and whatnot will kick in. Um, but yeah, so
mm,
part of the sessions. So that's
mm.
me. That's me.
Okay.
I was just wondering, how does that relate to, because when you're in flow with a client, like you mentioned,
Mm.
that's sort of that's relational as well, isn't it? So your client would be involved in that flow somehow. Yeah, have you thought about that, and possibly how that relates to the multiplayer games as well? What's happening with the client?
That's interesting. So do you mean that, am I understand correctly, that there might be transference, or even, yeah, maybe not projection but transference going on in the whole, or shared experience going on there as well?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I was thinking along those lines. I guess
Mm,
the way I think about therapy and counseling is that it's you're in a boat on a journey together, on a relationship journey together, and
mm,
when that journey can be in rocky waters, or it can be in calm water, but it can feel good either way, because you're heading in the right direction together.
yeah, yeah,
Mm. That's a good way to put it.
yeah. Not sure though. I mean, I have, I didn't really ask my client about it because it's really just my experience.
Yeah.
Maybe the client is struggling, with the questions that I ask, or
Mm,
reflecting on his or her own journey in life. So maybe we might have slightly different
mm,
perspective of the time and whatnot. But
Mm,
mm,
that's definitely something that I can keep in mind in my future session.
mm.
mm,
Good question.
mm. That's a good point.
I mean, certainly from like a perspective of onboarding a new client, we do think about flow, don't we? Because they just don't come back.
I think we lost you for a few seconds there, Alex.
Oh, that's a shame. I said something really profound.
Now you
No,
have to repeat that.
I'm just saying that when we onboard clients, we have to think about their level, where they're at, and not throw them in the deep end too quickly, and not make it move too slowly for them. It has to be engaging for them.
Yeah, that's true as well. That we are playing kind of that role for our client too.
Call it tracking, right? Tracking your
Tracking.
client. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And you might be using language they might not know, so you're checking in, and then you might be educating. This is what I mean by that. So a lot of times they use a lot of it's quite challenging and a lot of skill for them as well, especially with adolescents. So I don't know. Haven't really thought of this. I don't really. My mind's never thought this way. No one's asked me these questions. So it takes a lot of interpersonal and sort of even social skills if you're talking about something outside the room that they've never really worked before. And sometimes, and it might be really easy for the therapist, like connect the dots A, B, and C and D, but the person's never done A and B before, so you really have to help build them towards that transition to A to B. And once they sort of get that, then you do okay. Now, next step we can try to do A, B, C, and then So a lot of times I can imagine they would, in this sense, be in like a flow state. Especially if it's because I work in like sand tray, I can especially if they're doing something challenging while they're focusing on the figurine or archetype or symbol, whatever you want to call them, and so that's where the concentration is. So they're not, but they're still hearing and still replying, but they're sort of just using the figurines and moving them around in the sand, but not so consciously, because well, it depends how you use it, but that's sort of the main point of sort of the sand tray is using that subconscious. So not so aware, and then it comes out, it unpacks itself. So once again, they're not engaging too much on that, but there are enough to maybe to reply or to, So I can imagine flow would be able to come up in the counselling or the therapeutic relationship. Yeah. As for me, so to steal the limelight, I would say for me recently, and I need to get back into this, is when I'm drawing. So I've got this one track. It says goes a minute and a half, and the start is very similar to the end. So when it plays over and over again, it's like almost like a mantra, like dun 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 dun, dun and it dies off that way, and then Boo gets annoyed of it because I just do it for hours. It just goes for hours on the speaker till the speaker goes, and then I had to get myself prepared and get myself ready. And once I'm sort of in a good state, then I can start drawing. And once I'm drawing and I'm not too focused on the skill or what my errors, I just draw and I don't use eraser or anything like that. And then I go, I'm made aware of this. I go out and then I go zoom in to like the face, and it's like quite intense. And I just hone in and I don't notice. And then next thing you know, I've got my glasses on and I'm dealing with something 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter, and I'm like, oh, whoops, and then I just go out. Yeah. But I need to probably do it more often so I can get that feeling more often.
Yeah, that's really creative. Yeah, it sounds really satisfying being able to be so focused. It sounds like you're in a trance, eh?
It's always and that's why, like, if it's the same song, it's not a new song going to disrupt it. I'm not going to pay attention to a new change of music. It's turned into a background and sort of relates emotionally at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
So just
that reminded me a bit of that movie Inception for some reason, because like there's this background music that you're zoned out from, but it's ticking past. It's literally repeating like a timestamp throughout your experience.
Right.
It's interesting.
Yeah. That reminds when you said that, I've done a little sort of story that it's the start is sort of the end, and they sort of get stuck in time, which I might sort of I can start looking to draw it as well. But yeah, it's finding those things sort of motivate you, and then get into a state where you can invest into it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. What about for you, Alex?
Yeah. So, which well, yeah. How
So
have I experienced flow in my life? Yeah.
yes.
Um, yeah. So, I guess the really practical one for me is driving. I really love driving. I just always have, and I actually really like driving games as well. Um, and even though we all drive automatic vehicles these days, and there's not much mechanical action to it, I still get a lot of enjoyment out of really being in the zone while I'm driving, and like being kind of hyper aware of everything that's going on around me and of the size of the vehicle and the location of vehicles
And you
position.
like that?
Yeah, and position of other vehicles next to me. Yeah, I enjoy that a lot.
That's
I
your
guess
next job.
it probably reminds me a little bit of game development, because in
Ah.
game development you do manipulate the position and and rotation and speed of objects, and I grew up playing like first person, like Doom and these early first person shooters, so I get
Mm-hmm.
this real sense of space that I really enjoy. Yeah.
Well,
So,
this control of few different elements and dimension, almost.
yeah, and like I said, when I did have cars that had a manual gear
I lost
extra
you.
mastery. Oh, you lost me again. So
Yes.
with manual gear shift cars, I had an element of mastery in there as well. I really enjoyed this kind of like race driving, almost like playing gears, and
Mm.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I
Mm.
really enjoy that. Yeah,
There we go. We got your part-time job all lined
yeah,
up.
yeah. To be an Uber
You'll
driver.
be
Uber driver.
Uber Eats driver. You'll be delivering my Uber Eats.
I saw I saw something new today on the street. I saw a guy riding a bicycle for some New Zealand courier company, and it was this like brand new looking bicycle that had one of those big long fronts with a big box attached to the front, so you had the
Mm.
mail or boxes and parcels in there, and
Uh-huh.
it was an electric bike, and I kind of like I watched him like riding off the road and onto the pavement, and I thought that's kind of exciting because he's going to be delivering these parcels kind of in a time boundary, and he has to like
Mm.
take them at the fastest route, and like yeah, I was like, oh, that's quite cool.
In the weight at the front of it would be quite hard. It'd
Yeah,
be quite
so
heavy.
it's a really interesting design. Yeah, the whole this whole carrier is at the front, and there's a small wheel beyond the carrier at the front that can actually turn from via the handlebars. It's quite interesting.
Ah.
That's
Well,
interesting. Yeah.
ah. We've got New Zealand Post, but it's in like a golf buggy one,
Hmm.
and they just drive around and just lean over and just chuck it in and hop out. Yeah.
In London, there's a guy, or it's just like the same guy used to come around every day pushing this giant like shopping trolley, basically, but it had like a cover and stuff, and he would pull the mail and parcels out of that, and it was quite a big thing that he would be pushing around,
You'd be pushing it.
pushing it. I guess he was dedicated to our street or
Wow.
block or
So
something.
you had to walk the whole.
He had to walk the whole way. Yeah, that's so funny. Like it's so antiquated, eh?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Which, yeah, since we are talking in the real world scenario, do you think the state of flow can be found in the normal day to day uh job, you know, corporate or whatnot?
Yeah, I think so. I personally, for me, I probably want to spend more time in flow than I do. I think I tend to, because I have this bad habit of self-criticism and perfectionism. I think I tend to push myself beyond the kind of upper limit of challenge quite often through like time limits, or I must be faster at this, or this must be a perfect piece of code, etc. And so I take a lot of the fun out of my work by doing that. I'm not within these kind of healthy boundaries of flow. Yeah.
Mm.
That's interesting. And yeah, so this is a question for you. Maybe I'm leaving the having a tangent again, but let's see where it brings us. When you're playing game, because you have a background in developing game, does it affect how you enjoy the game or interact with the game?
Do you mean specifically the game I'm working on, or
The game that you play.
okay, so the game I'm both writing and playing? Is that what you mean?
No.
Oh,
Just like Super Smash Bros. Any commercial game that
yeah,
they are not
sure.
involved in. Yeah.
I think so because I think um, yeah, I think that writing games is sort of playing games at the next level because it's kind of like the creativity part of your gamer profile where you're building building levels or building characters or building story, etc. And try and make that as beautiful and polished as possible. So once I've done that, my kind of fix of games is really done. And when I'm writing games, I don't tend to play as many games because I don't need as much of it anymore.
Right. Okay, so essentially that kind of met the motivation or what you need the challenge at
Yeah,
the time.
yeah. I think there's other parts to it as well. It's like
Yeah.
staring at a screen for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, back to your original question, Gorgon. Yeah, I think it all depends on what sort of work environment and so forth. But I can imagine, I don't know, Alex, but I can imagine in your field, a lot of coders who are really passionate would get in a state of flow.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah, and there's all these, a lot of developers have these unspoken rules about, not disrupting their flow. Like you will, for example, you'll find some developers wear headphones so that people don't interrupt them. Other people will just have a sign on their desk that says "Stay away" in other language. Um, yeah, and in general, it can actually making games can be quite a quiet environment when people are not hanging out because everyone's so hyper focused.
Yeah, Alex, you talk about reducing the physical or the external distraction
Yeah.
to enable us to enable the coder to get into a state of flow. But what about the internal kind of process, internal, because like you mentioned just now, Alex, that a lot of time when we have like self-criticisms or imposing high expectation, that can act as a distraction from getting to the flow. How do you suppose we can, I guess, keep that in check?
Yeah, that's a journey I'm still on, to be honest. And I'm learning a lot about it through the kind of very deliberate practice of self-care. So another thing that's reasonably common in game development world is this sort of anxious overachiever type, which I could classify myself as. Um, so what I practice every day at work is setting really healthy boundaries for myself. So, for example, I have a break timer on my computer, which literally blocks out my screen every 15 minutes for 10 seconds. So I have to look away from the screen, and then every 50 minutes, it also blocks my screen for 10 minutes. So I get up, go and have a cup of tea, and disconnect for 10 minutes, and then I also do things like I decompress. So when I come home from work, I will usually go for a walk or maybe a swim, just get outside and get some fresh air before going home, where I would then make dinner or whatever, so that I've created some space between that and work. And other things I do, there's things like I also have like a screen color changer on my desktop, so that come the evening, blocks, it reduces blue light. So there's all these things I do to kind of reduce, I guess, my tendency to overexert.
It's kind of like a limiter.
Yeah, it's like external, it's self-regulation, enforced self-regulation. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
And it sounds almost like there's part of it is also having routine and having the self-compassion so that you don't burn yourself out, and doesn't bring your exhaustion level to a lower state where a lot of the I guess critical voice comes out that interrupts the flow.
Yeah, and I forgot one thing, going home on time. Like, as much as I would say to others, like, never work past your work hours, just go home. I definitely still do that occasionally. Like, yeah, it's so easy for me to slip into, oh, I'll just stay for another half an hour. I mean, like 2 hours later, oh God, why am I still here? Like, yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
Boundaries.
Yeah.
So, any more thoughts before we go on?
Not from me.
Well, I think that's about time, I think, for this podcast. We might actually have ended it within an hour this time, or close to. Yeah. So yeah, thanks for our listeners. Thanks for listening, and thank you both for your thoughts today. That's it.
No, it has been a good journey. Thank you.
Thank you.